Welcome. This is Elaine Starling. I'm the host of Why 5% Succeed. Only about 5% of any business in industry is really succeeding, really thriving and growing. And it's because those business owners and entrepreneurs have figured out how to add four different kinds of value. And that's what this show is all about. We get to meet with top-notch entrepreneurs and small business owners about the four ways they are creating value for their clients. Because you know what? You show your clients the money, and it's amazing how quickly you get to see the money. So today, I've got a fabulous guest with me. Before we speak to our guest, I need to introduce the panel who's here on the show today, because I keep forgetting to introduce them, and they're a very important part of the show. Now, at the very bottom, this handsome man, besides Manny, but the handsome guy with his microphone off is my husband, Dane Starling. He's learning how to be a Hangout producer. And this lovely lady here is Debbie Davis. She is my Hangout producer, and between Dane and Debbie, they are managing your comments so that I can stay completely focused on my wonderful guest, Manny Nowak. Manny is a fabulous business coach and entrepreneur. He is really well known for taking businesses from 6 figures into 7 figures. He's an incredible business consultant, and I really wanted to have Manny on the show because he approaches doing business in a different way, and his insights will really create huge value for you. Manny, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here, as always. Thank you.
I get so much out of every single conversation that we have. And I'd love to start with the very first kind of value that you create for your clients. And I'm using my little index cards. It's a rewarding experience. And I know that there's something that you're doing with your clients called your boot camp. Could you tell us a little bit about boot camp and how that really creates an incredibly rewarding experience?
Absolutely. And the boot camps are kind of the energy and the power that we try to put together to help people to build relationships and to really work on their business. They kind of leave the boot camp. The boot camps are really a gathering, a live gathering that we put on twice a year, and we fill a room full of people. They're all business owners, and the objective is that when they leave that boot camp, they're charged up. But a lot of people come to events and they get charged up and all that stuff, but there's more than that. They've built a relationship with somewhere probably between 10 and 20 new people. And that's going to change now the way they do business over the next year or until they come again in 6 months, because we try to do them every 6 months. I actually have a lot of people who've given me testimonials, and what it says is they walk away from here and they have sales leads, they have new customers, they have partnerships, and they've built some personal relationships and friendships. And you're just amazed at the relationships, because we do such an interactive training where we train and then we actually let people do it and see what happens. We don't just teach. We make them apply. We do networking. We do a thing called the Beehive game, which I originally learned from T. Harv Eckert, which is a tremendous experience. We do mastermind, and we do business planning, and we teach it, and then we actually let the people do it.
I can see how that's an incredibly rewarding experience. And when you were talking, I just had to make a note that face-to-face is incredibly powerful. We tend to be very reliant upon technology in today's business environment. And it's easy to get caught up with phone calls and emails and forget the face-to-face experience. But it is so powerful to get several people in a room together that you're trying to add value with them, because physical proximity makes a difference. It's fascinating. I'm really interested in how we learn and how we can be much more effective and productive. And it turns out that adding sight, sound, physical body movement and proximity with other people is really important because of mirror neurons in the brain. If you want to be a better tennis player, you play with a slightly better person. Your body will automatically start to mirror the moves of the other person. The same thing is true when you go to a live event like Manny's Boot Camp and you get a chance to hear from experts on the spot and then actually implement some of those ideas right away. Has that been your experience, Manny?
Absolutely. And one of the things that we do is we bring in a lot of guests. I mean, I do a lot of the training myself, but I always like to bring in other faces and people who have certain areas of expertise. Like we may do social media, so we'll bring in somebody who's really done some tremendous stuff. Or we may do CRM, so we bring in an expert in that area. But the face-to-face, and you'll watch me, I'm trying to control myself here because I'm used to being on stage in a live event, and so I'm trying to keep my hands still and sit still because I'm just not used to working that way, except for when we do the hangouts, and I have to catch myself. But I think the motion is very important, and what we try to do, and all the speakers I bring in, I try to bring in people who are lively and are really going to move around, and we get the people moving. I mean, we get them up, we get them doing stuff, and that makes a whole lot of difference.
That interactive piece also makes it really rewarding because people can truly apply what they're learning, and that's so important. Now, you mentioned a lot about the second critical value, which is relationships. And obviously, when you attend a live event like a boot camp, you start a relationship. But it's not always that easy to maintain a relationship over time. And Manny, you've got a really valuable process that you use every single week with your article and webinar and executive summary. Could you talk a little bit about that and the power that that has given you in building your client relationships?
Sure. And I'm an early adopter of the email stuff, and we used it in, gosh, many, many years ago. We were one of the original people, but I started a newsletter on a regular weekly basis about 7 years ago, and we do a piece every week which is strictly education. So if you meet me and you want to be on my list, I send you an educational piece every week, but it's strictly education. We do very little selling there. Right now we'll highlight the boot camp and stuff like that, but it's really, we pick one point and we educate people on it. And that has, I got to be honest with you, that has brought me more business than anything else I do, because I'm consistently in front of people and people are always saying, I've been reading this thing for years, I just had to do some business with you, or I had to get your help because that's just the way it happens. We added, about a year ago, we added a weekly webinar. So we do about 30 minutes, same thing, and a lot of times it's on the same subject, where we'll teach live for 30 minutes with some Q&A, depending on how much teaching it is. And again, that's another way, once you come into the realm of being part of our relationship, we continue to work our relationship that way. And that converts. I mean, it's amazing how that converts into relationships and makes it work for us.
You know, Manny, I think one of the critical things that you said was consistent. You have a consistent process for staying in front of your audience, and that makes all the difference in the world. How are you picking the different topics that you cover each week?
That's an interesting question. If you saw our piece a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to a client, and they were really frustrated about the whole email thing. They were not the email marketing so much, but just the fact that they send out emails to people they know, and people just ignore emails. Today they just don't answer them. And so I said, wow, that sounds like something people would really be interested in. So we wrote an article, and we highlighted, you know, how come you don't answer emails? How come that's such an issue? How come it's a problem? we got tremendous response. So I get a lot of it from clients, from people I meet, from just seeing the issues and problems that are going on, because what we try to do with the piece is answer some of those questions for people. We're trying to create a place where people can come and say, here's some questions we have. Now, a lot of times they are about business development because that's kind of the area that I specialize in, but we can go in a variety of different ways. But that's how mostly they come about. They are real live problems that someone has brought to the surface. Now, they just come to me sometimes. I mean, I'll just be sitting there in the morning and all of a sudden I'll get an article and I'll write it. And so, I don't know, so we've been very lucky that over that 7 years, we put a piece out every week. So
that's really fabulous. That is so important that you can do that on a consistent basis, because having that free flow of ideas and also making sure that you're always educating and giving, that really helps cement the relationship. Now, there was something that you said to me a while ago that hasn't come up, and I want to make a point of it on the show today because it was really profound. And you said that one of the biggest differences between six-figure companies and seven-figure companies is that they know how to delegate. Could you speak to that for just a little bit?
sure. That is, I do a talk today called The 7 Myths of Success. And one of the things that drives through that whole speech is the thing about people forgetting to delegate or not wanting to delegate. And you can do so much as one person, but until you release that stuff to others, you're never going to go anywhere because you start to get so jam-packed and run over by the things that have to be done. So delegation is, if I look at the six-figure companies out there, and a lot of these companies are not companies that have just been around a little while. A lot of them have been around for quite a while, and that's what happens. The owner refuses to let anybody do something. They're spending, I can tell you a story about an owner who was spending 8 hours a week doing financial stuff, and this was a $200 an hour engineer who could have hired somebody for $25 an hour, and worse than that, that person could have done a job in about 1 hour. So finally we got them to release, and they started to grow. So yeah, it is all about letting people do things. And it's that whole story which many of us have heard is, what do I do well and what don't I do well, and let it go. Just like you in the hangout here we were talking about before we got on the air, about I'm letting these technicians handle the technical end and I'm on stage. Same thing with me. This is all I want to do. I just want to do the show. I want to try to get somebody else to do all the other stuff because it's what I do best. And that's so important.
That's really great. And Manny, the reason why I made a point of bringing up the whole idea of delegation right now is one of the biggest challenges I find most business owners and entrepreneurs have is we're control freaks, right? We have a vision for our business and nobody gets our vision but us. And so we really want to wrap our heads around that vision. And I find we struggle with, okay, is it right? It's my way, so it's right, or is it about the relationship? And when you can let go and let somebody else bring their genius to your baby, if you and I are standing back to back, I can see 180 degrees and you can see 180 degrees. But together, we got a 360-degree thing going on here. And I've got to be comfortable enough to let go and let you jump in and participate. That's a big secret for success.
Absolutely, and I love your example. I'm going to have to use that. You okay if I use it? I think that's a great way to look at it and a great way to teach somebody very basics that, you're spinning around all the time instead of going back.
You're trying to look over your shoulder and you don't have a good view.
That's
You
good.
wonder why you need a chiropractor. You're hurting your neck trying to look over your shoulder all the time. It's
Yeah,
insane.
and you know, most
Yeah.
business owners need that chiropractor.
No kidding. No kidding. Well, Manny, let's move on. Let's move on to the third way that you create value, and that is with reputation. And it's not so much necessarily your reputation, it's really showcasing your clients. And you do such a good job of that with your webinars and with your boot camp. And could you talk a little bit about some of the things that you do to enhance your clients' reputation?
Okay, great. First of all, when we do the boot camp, if I have somebody I'm working with that has a great skill that I believe needs to be shared, we bring them right into the boot camp because and sometimes these are people who don't have a great amount of speaking background, so we do have to work with them. But you know what? I know people say it's one of the greatest fears or the greatest fear, but once you get on stage, you feel great. So we do showcase them. We bring them up. Sometimes we have to help them, so I use an interview process like we're doing here for someone who's just not comfortable speaking. So, but they're still comfortable, but not as a speaker. We use them as helpers. I mean, my whole staff at the boot camp is all volunteers who are clients or people, and we sometimes give them some time on the stage to talk about their product and service. I mean, these people, I learn as much from my clients as I teach them. I think that's one thing most of us in coaching have found out over the years, that we learn from them. So I want to share that with everyone that's out there. Um, I'm okay here, right? Am
Yeah,
I
uh-huh. You're doing
okay?
fine.
Well, I
I
lost.
love what you're talking about. But,
All right.
one of the things that I want to do also is make this really real for the people in the audience who are watching, because they're like, okay, that's great, but I don't do a boot camp. What could I do to really showcase my clients, right? How could I stand out? How could I make a difference? So I would invite everybody watching to think of 3 different things your clients have to do in order to make progress. And how are you measuring and then acknowledging their progress? There are lots of different ways you can do that. What are some different things that you would recommend, Manny,
We're showcasing the products.
for showcasing your clients and their progress? Maybe it's writing an article about the client. Maybe it's featuring them in the blog, in a blog post about how they made progress and what the challenge was that they had to overcome in order to get there. You could also do a social media post about them and just tweet about the fact that they've made some progress and congratulate them on moving forward. The hardest part is just getting started. It's just starting to move a little bit. And as soon as you start to see the progress, you start to build momentum. And that momentum becomes contagious. Remember, we talked about the mirror neurons, how you can show, I've got a client here who's making progress. That means you're automatically also inclined to make progress. Let's see how we can celebrate you too.
Yeah, and we do all those things. I think they're all good. Um, we do write articles about the clients, and a lot of again, we'll go back to that. And anybody can do that. I mean, today with a lot of the LinkedIn, everybody's looking for people to write stuff. So if you have a client that's accomplished something, you may not use their name or stuff that's going to identify them, but you can write about their progress to showcase them. Now, sometimes they want you to showcase them that way. We'll do stuff on social media like, wow, because we work with this client, they now aren't working 18 hours a day anymore. They really have a life. Watch them as they play soccer here with their, it's just that kind of stuff. The biggest way we showcase clients is we refer them to business. So in other words, when I have a client who has come a long way, they already have a good skill, but we've taught them some other things. We'll refer them out because that's the best way to showcase your client, is to help them get some business from someone you know. So I think all of us can do that, because as we get, who would you use but the people that you're working with on a regular basis? So I think everyone can do that. And the social media thing is just, you can take that as far as you want out there. You know, as far as showing off what a client can do. And again, that will bring them business and make them even a greater success.
That's wonderful. Well, you're doing so much to really enhance your client's reputation, and by default, it rubs off on you. Because when it's clear that your clients are doing really well and you're the common denominator, all of a sudden people are like, hey, you know, I should be working with this Manny guy too. You know, it just rubs off. It makes a lot of sense.
It does.
Well, let's talk about the fourth way you create value. And you brought it up. It's revenue. It's the moolah. It's the money in the pocket. And there are three different things that I talk about when it comes to revenue. The first one is, how do you help your clients make more money? I know there's lots of different things that you do, Manny. What would be some examples of some things that you do with your clients to help refine what they're up to so they can make more money?
Okay. We'll go back to what we talked about originally, is we teach them how to delegate.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you're in a small business, sometimes, and let's say you're an engineer, you should still be doing some physical engineering work because you're very good and you happen to pull in a great rate, and that will increase your margin and increase your revenue as well. But there comes a point where you got to let go, where you got to make that transition, and that's the number one thing that we do, is we teach the people to run the business or get somebody else to run it and do what they do best. I have some clients who are just super salespeople and they love selling, and for me to take them out of that selling function would kill their revenue. So, but if I let them sell more, revenue actually goes up, and they hire somebody to do a lot of the administrative stuff and run the business day to day.
That's really great. Now, you're alluding to something, but you aren't coming right out and saying it. So I'm going to come right out and say it.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
One of the things that you do really well is help your clients identify critical systems and processes. Because once you've got systems and processes in place, then you're in a position to delegate. If you don't have that worked out, you can't delegate. So is there one specific system that you would say every single business on the planet absolutely has to have documented and processes so that they can delegate?
And it's the one they fear the most, the financial end. In my business, in what I see, is that's the one nobody wants to let go of, and it's not documented. A lot of times it's someone's spouse doing it or someone's children doing it, and it just doesn't work. So that's the one I see that people hold as long as they can. They keep holding on to that, and we got to delegate it, and it needs to be documented. But the thing I teach is you also have to have some controls, because we've seen too many people out there delegate the financial thing and get burned because they weren't watching something that they needed to watch. But you're right, systems and process. In fact, that was next on my list here. Because I work with people, I say the one thing you do is, first of all, the stuff that you do regularly, just start writing down how that's done. 5 steps, 10 steps, whatever. Then we'll take it to some formal process. We'll get somebody to write it up so it looks a little neater. Once you have that done, then you ask yourself, could somebody do this? And if it can, then you give that away. And you just start doing it that way, and it's amazing what will happen. I found myself the other day with a process that I do, the webinar process, and I found 90% of that process I could delegate. So I wrote it up and I started delegating it.
That's great.
Let's see, what else?
Well, let's move on. Oops, I'm sorry. Did you have one more thing you want to say under how you help your clients make more money? Okay.
Yeah, we teach them how to, we talked already about relationships and the fear of building those relationships. I think a lot of times people who come into business don't understand that the most important thing they need to learn is how to build that business relationship with somebody else, because that's the way they're going to make money. I look at a lot of clients, especially in the professional end, and I ask them, how do you get most of your business? And what we find is over half of that business coming from a relationship that they've built. So we use something called the 250 by 250 matrix, which says find the 250 most critical people in your life and start working them and watch how your business grows. And I didn't come up with that. I was trying to find the book. I thought I had it sitting around here that we got that out of. It's
That
called
is great.
Referral for Life. That's the book. I think you and I talked about it.
Yes, we did, and I'm just going to highlight that, a 250 by 250 matrix. The book is Referrals for Life. And yes, that's a really great strategy to build referrals, build relationships, and increase the revenue coming into the business. Now, Manny, let's look at the second way you impact revenue, which is helping your clients save more money. And you did start with an example of the engineer who was wasting a lot of time and therefore wasting a lot of money trying to do all the financials himself when he could have gotten in somebody much less expensive to handle a lot of it. What are some other things that you're doing to help your clients save more money?
Okay, this is the one where we do probably more work than anything else, which is in measuring and holding people accountable. Because it is amazing how many people in business, small business specifically, do not measure. They don't really know what they're spending. They don't really have most of my clients had no budget when we started, and people say, well, we're too small, but you're never too small. So we have them measure, but not just sales. We have them measure stuff like in the sales process, how much are you spending on marketing? And you talk about what's your ROI on that marketing? You know, are you really getting anything back? If you put out $10,000, how much business can you really attribute to that $10,000 that you just put out? And I mean really measure. We get them to really start looking at, where did every client who walks into your business you start doing business with, where did they come from? All right. Let's see what else I have here on my list. Again, from a savings standpoint, when you start giving, like I gave you the example where it takes the person 8 hours to do it, you can hire somebody and it takes them 1 hour to do it. Well, there's a lot of other areas where we struggle as entrepreneurs. We're not very good at it. So if I bring somebody in who's very good at it, it's amazing how much money I can save. People only look at what they put out. And I wanted to share that. I call it the superstar story, because what that really means, and I keep telling people to look at this, is we're all afraid to hire that superstar. A lot of times we're afraid to hire that person who's smarter, better, sharper than we are, because we're afraid they're going to take our business from us at some point. And I was having this conversation the other day, and I said, look, if you hire that salesperson and they bring in $3 million in new business over the next couple years, and then they leave and they take $1 million with them, who cares? You're still up $2 million. And if you hire sharp people, your business grows, because they will be one of the big people that will say, how come you're wasting money over here? How come you're not doing this? Or how come you're doing that? Because another set of eyes is a great way to save a lot of money.
You know, Manny, again, you're reinforcing this idea of get out of that control freak mode. Yes, numbers tell a story, and you have to be prepared to understand what the story is. But more importantly, you've got to bring a really solid team together so that you can be successful. We do have a question or a comment. Sheila Stover, more not wanting to delegate than forgetting to delegate. That's a real problem with her. So you're saying, Sheila, that it's more that you forget to delegate instead of that you don't want to delegate. I'm assuming that that's the point that you're trying to make here. Manny, do you have any recommendations on how people can remember to delegate?
Get a coach. They'll tell you. That's tough because that's a very big problem out there. People are just so used to doing it that they don't even think about giving it to somebody else. So what the best way for you to handle that is just look at everything you do and say, do I really need to do this? One of the first things I do when I work with people is let's do the list over the next couple weeks. Everything you do, you take a piece of paper and you just put a line down the middle and say, this is stuff I do that I need to do, that I don't need to do. And maybe you need to just put that list up and say, here's when I do this, this is something I could delegate, and I can start delegating it. It does slip our mind because I know all the entrepreneurs out there are so busy that we just don't think about it. We just think about, I got to get this done, I got to get this done, I got to get this done. So put up some list or something that you can check. That's the best piece of advice for you.
You know, also, Manny, one of the things that hit me was the whole frustration factor of, yeah, but then I got to take time out to train somebody, right? Well, one of the best things I ever did was hire a fabulous video editor. Ryan is somebody I absolutely adore. He can take my shows and chop them into great social media sound bites. He edits everything so that it looks fabulous. He puts the music, he puts the intro and outro. I don't have to try and explain what it is I need. He gets it. He is such a great professional at what he does. I can step back out of the loop and focus on what I do really well. And I don't know why it took me so long to figure that out, but when you collaborate with people who are experts at what they do, it actually saves you a ton of time, and they can do it a lot better than you might have.
Absolutely, and I could give you a great example. I use this website Fiverr. I don't know if if I have something like the other day, I was writing up a document. It was a one-page thing I wanted to get out. I just go to Fiverr, I find somebody on there, and for $5, they edit it, they fix it up, and I send it out. Instead of spending an hour trying to go through there and edit the document myself. So there are a lot of resources online where you can delegate stuff. You don't necessarily, when we say delegation, it's not necessarily delegate to a physical person working with you. There's so much you can do online to get people to help you.
Manny, thank you for making that distinction, because the majority of small business owners and entrepreneurs are sole proprietors. They
Yes.
don't have another person in the office that they can delegate to, and so it's really challenging thinking that, well, it's my vision, it's my responsibility, I have to do everything from soup to nuts. And in reality, there are resources out there that can help streamline and simplify so that you can outsource what you're doing. So let's move on to the third way that you bring in revenue, and that's how you make your clients feel like $1 million or more. What is it you're doing, Manny, to help your clients feel like $1 million?
Well, it doesn't actually start that way. They actually terrible at first. Because and one of the things I always tell people before I work with them is, you know, if you're going to work with me, I'm going to be straight and honest with you. So, and sometimes it's not going to feel real good. But when you see what that does, you'll be amazed. And before long, they start to realize they've got to move from what feels good to what needs to be done. And we all know that. And too many times as entrepreneurs, we try to do what we feel like doing, and we get nothing done. So we move them forward to getting done what they need to, and then they feel great because all of a sudden they're getting to leave their office at 6 o'clock instead of 9:30 at night, and they're like, wow, this makes me feel good. All of a sudden they have some money coming in because they've cut some costs and they've increased revenue, and they can go do some of those things they want to do, like take their spouse on a vacation, buy that new car. Those things all make them feel much better because they're successful. And we want to be successful. We're entrepreneurs, even though the number one reason is freedom. I have to tell you that is the number one reason, but it is good when we're making money. Then we can really enjoy that freedom that we have. Um, and success, of course, we love to watch. If you measure, then you can see what's really happening. And it's not just a matter of, well, I made some money. It's, I really thought I could make, that 200,000, and I made it. And here's the measurement. So they're seeing some dollars flow in. So to me, it's dollars times time and just plain being able to accomplish what you set out to do.
That's great. That's great. Because, often, especially when you're working so hard in your business, you're not looking at the business and you don't have that holistic perspective. So when you're working with somebody who's a business coach like Manny, and you get real clarity on your processes, your systems, what you can outsource and delegate, and you've got those key metrics that you're monitoring, and those are the bellwethers. Those indicate when great, life is really good, or uh-oh, things are going to tank, so we got to take some evasive maneuvers. If you know what to look for and you know how to stay on top of things, it builds that feeling of confidence. That really makes you feel like, wow, I've got my business, I'm growing, I'm thriving, and it's just such an exciting place to be.
Truly is. It is. When you hit this success, and as I said, when I was at a conference recently, the number one thing is we want the freedom. But if we're worried all the time and our business isn't successful, we really don't have freedom because we're being held back by not being successful. So you need to measure. And if you're measuring, you can see what you're doing, you can see what you're not doing, which is just as important, and you can create that great success.
That is so wonderful. Manny, the last question I always ask my guests, because I do the best I can to come up with really tricky questions for you, but is there anything that I didn't think to ask or anything that you would like to say to our audience that you think is really helpful, that will help them grow their business?
I'll just reiterate the point that I brought up before about don't be afraid of bringing in that talent. Don't be afraid of bringing in those stars, because that's what's going to make your business really thrive. And yes, stars are not going to stay. You just have to, you can go out and you can hire those good people, and they're going to come and they're going to go, but they're going to leave behind some great success. The key is you have to make sure you have the right expectations on the table so they know what you expect, and you have to make sure you have some way to measure what they're doing. But other than that, bring them stars in, let them stay while they can, let them take your business to that next level, and then let them go and go find some more. Because when you build your business as the place that attracts or that will hire those great people, you will all of a sudden see amazing people come into your business, and you won't even be looking backwards. You will be looking at hitting 8 figures instead of 7.
That's great. And Manny, it just reminds me of the expression, a rising tide lifts all boats.
Yes.
It's so true. When you bring in that stellar person, like I said earlier, if you want to learn how to play tennis really well, they used to bring in coaches that would critique you and give you negative feedback all the time on all the things you were doing wrong. And it turned out it put a negative little voice in the back of your head, and it made you really tense, and then you would miss a lot of shots. Instead, the new way to develop really sound, incredibly talented tennis players is to have them play with somebody who's just a little bit better, because then they automatically gravitate toward those movements, those actions that are much more effective and much more successful. It's the same thing with your superstar concept. You bring a superstar into your business and everybody rises to that kind of level and strives to attain that same level of expertise and competence. Makes a big difference.
You're absolutely right, and I can relate that because now I'm not a great golfer. I love to play the game, but when I play with people, and I try to play with people who are so much better than I am, my game goes up tremendously. And even when we used to play other sports, when you play with people who are good, you become so much better.
Absolutely. Well, Manny, thank you so much for letting me play with you today. You're up in our game for sure. You've provided some really great insights and tips that people can implement in their business right away. And I'd say the first one is to identify some of the processes and systems in your own business and see what you can outsource. That will make a huge difference in your quality of life and your quality of business. This is Elaine Starling with Why 5% Succeed. Many thanks to Dane Starling and to Debbie Davis, our Hangout producers, and also to my fabulous guest, Manny Nowak. Thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you.
All right, take care. I'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.